Hello everyone and welcome to my channel where I typically talk about low code, no code, automation with Make, formerly Integromat. First of all, excuse my voice, I've been recovering from COVID. Today I wanted to talk about Make APIs. So I'm a big fan of server-side programming. I use APIs of all kinds all the time and they're tremendously useful. For various reasons, and the main is that you typically want to control something from within your code. So while Make is great for crafting these quick integrations by hand, you absolutely can and you should monitor or manage them rather programmatically as well. So everything you can see here, the title, these modules, their content, that all can be programmatically managed, and that's awesome. So when I saw this API, my initial instinct was to, just write a client, like a JavaScript client. You would be able to plug it into your website and then make these calls behind the scenes and manage your own project. But obviously there are limitations. Security for first. You can't make Ajax call from JavaScript to third-party server. You cannot make them unless they run within the same domain or unless the owner of the server allowed for communication with your particular domain, which obviously you don't control. I don't control, the setup of these servers, EU1make.com or US1make.com. So I figured the initial step I need to make is to write a server on my own that would wrap around these calls and then I can control it, deploy it, and whitelist whatever client I need. So I ended up with my own implementation of this API, and it's been a journey. Here's a quick spec. So I only chose a fistful of endpoints, which I deemed are useful. So first of all, I wanted to be able to create a scenario providing team ID, folder ID, which is like coordinates where the scenario would be stored, and obviously the blueprint. Blueprint is a bit of a touchy subject because, as you can see, you have to provide an escaped JSON, which is hard to achieve. So more on that later, but for now, let's assume that's the case. Further, I wanted to be able to update the scenario. It's a no-brainer. What if the initial blueprint was, wrong? What if there was some sort of a mistake? You want to be able to just go and feed it with scenario ID and then give it a different blueprint. Essentially, with all these endpoints you can see here, both scenarios and patch scenarios and scenario ID, etc., etc., I try to stay as close to the original API design as possible, not to confuse anyone, make it easier for people to use my server. Okay, the remaining endpoints are get scenario blueprint, which given the scenario ID, I'll just return the blueprint with some data around it, more on that later. And ultimately, I wanted to be able to update scenario module data. What I mean is, I wanted to be able to reach out to these guys here and do something about their content. All right, so let's just delve right into it. There's one thing you need before you start. You need an API token. So this is how to get one. So if you go to your profile, let me do it again. You go to profile, in Make, go to the API tab, and there you need to create a new token. There are defined scopes, but for what I needed to do, I'm using the scenarios API token. So scenarios read and scenarios write was enough, is enough for us to play with it. Okay, so what I'll be showing here, I'll be showing you the real API keys. Obviously, once I'm done with this video, I will recreate them, so they will no longer be valid. Anyway, so prepared a bunch of calls in Postman. My API server is up and running. Show it here in my IDE. This runs on localhost on port 8080. So first of all, let me start with the create scenario. So I'm connecting to my localhost, hitting this endpoint post v1 scenarios. I need a bunch of headers. First of all, I just declare expect the call to handle application JSON. So I'll only be dealing with JSON, obviously. And then there's XAuth token. Well, that's a header I made up. Let me explain. So make itself, they expect you to pass the authorization header. Where is it? Yeah, the authorization header. And then you have to pass the token like this. You type in token space and then that your actual token. Well, my server does exactly that when talking to make, but it does that in the background. But my server, when it runs, it accepts this XAuth token, a custom header, where it just passes the token as is. And then it knows how to get it from the header and pass it on to make in the authorization header format. Then body is just JSON object where I specify my team ID, folder ID, and a blueprint. All right, so if I go to my scenarios, I've got this experiments folder. Currently there are 4 scenarios in it. So if I go to Postman and just let it run, let me see. Yeah, it says created. For some reason isn't showing the results. But anyway, if I go to my scenarios, there is a new empty integration, which is if we have a look at Postman again. Oh yeah, no, sorry, I got confused. So this is obviously the response. This is the response from the server, and if you look at the payload, you see empty integration, and basically there is nothing. There are no modules. There are no modules in this. Oh, sorry, there is one. We just delete it and do it again, just to make sure. So if I delete it, go to Postman, send it. That's my response. Actually, this is the scenario ID. This is the ID of the new scenario. If I refresh this, there is my new scenario. 473728 matches. and there is one item in it, which is parse JSON currently. It's not valid, it's empty, but we'll fix it later. Okay, so that's how to create a scenario. Now, if, say I want to update it, so I might as well just grab this ID, go to my update scenario, and I can just paste it here. I leave the blueprint as is. Now it says updated scenario. The content might be different, might be the same, but let's say for the sake of the exercise, I just change the title for sure. If I send it now, so what I got back again is just like basic information about my scenario. So I know it was successful. It returns the ID, the coordinates, and then the title, which is now changed. So make doesn't have like auto refreshes. You have to keep reloading the full page, but it's fine. Let me see. So if I go to, oh, it's no longer, it's actually a different ID. Sorry. This is now the updated scenario. 473.728. That's, yeah. So the content did not change, but the title did. So that's great. So I was able to update my scenario. This is awesome, but note that you work with these blueprint strings and they're not easy to work with. I wouldn't want to touch this by hand. So when I was writing the server, I felt I needed some better control over the actual content of the scenario. And I started with like writing an endpoint that would fetch better details about a scenario. So in this example, let me run it first. So here's an existing scenario. So if I run this, get me blueprint, I'll get blueprint of that scenario. I will get obviously scenario name, and I get this module section. This module section, it's an array, and what it does, it extracts from the blueprint. It extracts from the blueprint all the modules that are in it and makes them visible. Let me just show you how the scenario looks like. So if I go to experiments, now which one is it? Let me see, not this one. Nope. Can actually just switch to the ID like that. Great, so that's my scenario. I made it such that they're like nested modules. So note that these routers here, they're not modules themselves, they route to other modules. So there are 2 routers, and there are 5 modules in total. If you have a look at the response, let me just make it visible. If you have a look at the response, yeah, you will see that they match, that the module IDs match with what you can see here. So this module tool says ID 5, and what it does, it allows you to set a variable. So set variable here. Number 10 is compose a string. So I should improve this. It's not coming in any particular order, but it's good. So number 10 deals with a string composition, and so on and so forth. So there are 3 other modules which I all have listed here. All right, so, and then obviously this JSON is just the whole entire compressed blueprint, which obviously includes all these modules within itself, but I treat it as a blob. Essentially, it's something I don't want to touch by hand. I don't want to look at even. It's only good to just take as is, send it to make, and it'll either create or update a scenario based on it. Okay. That's great, but now the ultimate goal would be to be able to modify the content of these modules here. So for instance, when I say set variable and there is a variable value, it would be awesome if I could change the variable value from my code, and instead of like going to the canvas and like clicking it by hand. Same for any of these. You know, like this for instance refers to variable. What if I wanted to refer to a different variable or a static string? So all these modules carry content. This one doesn't even have any. Carry content, and that content is of interest. I might want to be able to modify it. So here comes my last endpoint, which is set module data. So I take this very scenario, this one, and again, and this time I just say, well, take modules 9, 12, and 13, which are these? Or maybe just do it like that. 9, 12, and 13. Take them and update their content. So update this here, this box. Do something here, programmatically. So that's what I say. Module ID key is actually the name of the field that carries the value. This is tricky because based on you have to know what kind of a module you're dealing with. So if I am dealing with a string compose string module, I know that this text here is the field beneath that is called value. If I deal with JSON, the field beneath this JSON string is called JSON. So I have to know that. But once I do, I'm good. So I can say key value or key JSON, and then the actual value is what I want to put in. So for now, I want all of these 3 modules have a reference to my greeting variable. So let's see if I run that, send it. It's taking a moment. I'm looking to optimize that code. Alright, so the result seems to be successful. True means it must have been updated. So let me reload again. Let's see if it worked. So number 9 has the value of a variable. Number 12 is the same. 13 now contains a reference to the variable as well, which is awesome. Yeah. Now, say for JSON, I might want to this time change it to say hello world. Not much of a JSON string, but for the sake of the exercise, let me run it again. After having refreshed the page, my hello world string has been sent to the JSON parser. Alright, so that brings me to the end of what I wanted to show you in terms of my server. Just to wrap it up again, Make exposes a detailed fine-grained API, and I wanted to write a client, JavaScript client, because I cannot make AJAX calls just from any domain to the make.com domain. I created my own server wrapper that builds on top of some of the selected endpoints. I added the ability of bulk operations by modifying several modules at once, and I've applied other optimizations, which I will talk about some other time. But obviously, writing a server is not my ultimate goal. Even though it's helpful, let me just say, the server I've written, it can run in two modes. You can either not pass your authentication token you create in Make into the server itself, then you can just deploy it and expose it publicly so that everyone can, or not just everyone, but people or companies you approve on can test it. Can test make API calls via your server, and why would they go via your server? Well, because now you can control security. You can whitelist certain domains, and then maybe these people are able to make AJAX calls towards your own server that mediates access to makes, and they're happy because their JavaScript code makes these API calls to make thanks to your server. But you would only expose that if you don't have any credentials in the server itself. So you just spin it up, and then each of the client calls would have to pass this XAuth token carrying a token to their own project. So I would call it for this one, and I would obviously modify my own data, pass in my own team ID and folder ID, etc., scenarios IDs, and someone else would do the exact same with different data affecting their own organization's scenarios. Or you actually want to use it just internally. Maybe you're a small company, maybe you have your own single scenario make account. Then the server is also ready to be deployed with this token. So in which case, when you spin up the server, you don't need to pass this header. You would just talk directly to the server without having to pass the authentication token. It would authenticate towards Make on its own. What I have not finalized yet is obviously authentication towards the server. So it's essentially not a good practice to just expose server publicly or even internally without any sort of authentication, without any sort of a knowledge who is talking to the server. So that's just one bit I would like to finalize. But then my plan is to deploy it, make it, for instance, on Heroku, deploy it, make it accessible, and let people test integration with Make. And I think this is beneficial for Make as well, because that'll make their API more visible, hopefully, there've been a bunch of questions in the community around that, so it's an interesting experiment to do. But my original intention was to write a client. I'm yet to write the JavaScript client, but for now I have got a JVM client. The current implementation is in Kotlin, so all I showed you here in Postman can also be done from the command line or from within your code. So here I instantiate the make client. Make client is my own implementation, which again in the background leverages makes API. As you can see, here is the access token again. Here are some details about instantiating the client. I skip them for now, they're not essential. And yeah, this is how you would programmatically create a scenario. So if I run this code, let me just quickly run it. Stop the server for now, and then just switch to this class. So if I programmatically if I run this class, yep. So you see this on success and on failure callbacks. On success, I print out whatever I got back from make, and yeah, indeed it was successful. I got a new scenario. This is the scenario ID. So let me just copy it, go to make, paste it here, and there should be an empty scenario. Awesome. So here's an empty scenario, freshly created from my code. Then same, I could update the scenario again, or get the blueprint. So let's see how the blueprint would look like. So if I just say, yeah, sorry, this isn't too fleshed out, but it just hopefully gives you an idea. So if I just get the blueprint details of this scenario, so I just run it again. There we go. So there's a bunch of modules. Now it's flattened to a single line, but I hope you get the idea. And if I have a look at the scenario itself, it's the one with routers, so they're nested modules. Similarly, I could simply update the modules data, just like I did in Postman. So if I go to Postman, so set module data, and you see the array here. Each item carries information about the change. Then I do exactly the same thing here in the client. So I pass scenario ID. I have a list of module updates, as I call them. And then if that runs, then I will hopefully see the changes and make. So overall result is true, meaning successful. So if I refresh, have a look at the results. It's not looking too good. That's changed. It's changed. Maybe I did not update the. Oh no, I should have. Oh, but it's not value. See, I made a mistake. It's not a value. See, that's why I need to be super observant, and as I progress with this project, I will try to improve the user experience. But for right now, you have to understand what's in these fields. If I run it again, I hopefully will see an update to the JSON module as well. Yeah, it's done. And need to refresh. Go to JSON, and there we go. Greeting is there. Okay, anyway, let me wrap it up here. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts and suggestions for improvements. It's been a journey with this project. I'm nowhere near to the end, but hopefully I'm on the right track, and you find this both the client and the server useful. Thank you, and until next time, bye.